Greetings, fellow pilgrims. Welcome to our 17th issue of LogoSophia magazine, the first of 2024, based on value and worth. In this issue, you will find various takes on worth, as well as poems and a new fairy tale. Please enjoy and let us know what you think. Happy winter. Sarah Levesque, Editor-in-Chief. A note on the audio magazine. Most of the articles within this magazine were read aloud by their respective authors. The remaining articles were read aloud by me or by one of my team. If you like the audio version of our magazine, check out the visual version to find games, book and movie suggestions, and much more. All rights for this issue as a whole are held by LogoSophia magazine. Once published, no submissions may be removed from the issue, just like in any print magazine. All rights for the articles, stories, poems, etc. within this issue are retained by their respective authors, including reprinting rights. If you wish to reprint an article, story, poem, etc., please contact us at editors.logosophia@gmail.com. Thank you. Wanted. Readers and listeners of any faith to interact respectfully with writers and other readers and listeners through book and media suggestions and letters to the editor, as well as comments on logosophiamag.com and social media. Writers of Christian faith to augment the works of our staff. Advertisers and donors to support us financially.
Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, and not one of them is forgotten before God? Why, even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not. You are of more value than many sparrows. Luke 12:6-7.
A prayer. As I go to work, be with me, Lord. Be the patience when I'm frustrated. Be the endurance when I'm tired. Be the wisdom when I am uncertain. Be the inspiration when I'm out of ideas. Be the peacemaker when I feel hurt. Be the comforter when I feel overwhelmed. Be the energy when I am weary. Be the guide when I am confused. Be the forgiver when I get it wrong. Be with me, Lord, today. From prayers.com/prayer/selfworth. Definitions. Dignity, noun. 1. Formal reserve or seriousness of manner.
Who is the Monster and Who is the Man? By Pizzolatto. Sing the bells of Notre Dame. Thus begins one of the most iconic adaptations of Victor Hugo's most popular book, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It asks the question, who is really the monster, Frollo or Quasimodo? The movie does answer it, but the original story had a different vibe to it. While it did ask and answer the same question, it was not the main question that Victor Hugo wanted to answer. The answer he sought was more concerned with the beauty and worth of a cathedral, a silent century of Parisian history, than the fictional events that unfolded at her feet. Many, many years ago, a cathedral was in danger of falling into disrepair. It would be just another in a long line of monuments to the hard work and artistry of the men who made them that could not be maintained due to the cost. One man, however, was determined that it would be saved for generations to enjoy, and set out to save it the best way he could, to write a book. Thus, Hunchback of Notre Dame was created, and Victor Hugo practically saved Notre Dame single-handedly with it. At least, he is credited with creating what is now best known as the Historical Society to care for the church and other important historical sites. Also, by saving Notre Dame, Hugo sought to save Gothic architecture in general, as the style was being pushed aside to give way to the new style of the day. Similar conversations are being had to this day. What with the new style of churches popping up across America? The main question, which is echoed in the characters, is what makes a church? What makes it worthy? Many will probably say what is on the inside, how good the congregation acts, and rightfully so. Jesus stated, by their fruits you will know them. But then, what are the fruits? These fruits, as it is understood, are the outward sides of inner virtue, or vice. It is not dependent upon outward appearances, though as noted in the picture of Dorian Gray, it can show up over time. But the main point is that outward appearances should not dictate the value of a person or a church. And yet many want a church to be awe-inspiring, to be full of intricate design, and a wealth of color both in and out. Sure, it does not mean the congregation within is a good one. That is for God to decide. But it is an answer to the desire to create something worthy of a terrific and awesome God. He created us and a whole planet to house us, full of majestic columns, exquisite perfumes, breathtaking colors, mind-blowing choruses, and intricate designs. It is only natural to copy that in our buildings, art, music, and legends. As such, Victor Hugo was of the opinion that society was leaving such beauty behind. Though it was but one style, it was the style he did not want forgotten. So then, once again, how does one determine the value and worth of, well, anything and anyone? Perhaps the easiest answer is that someone gave them value, and it cannot be taken away, not even if society's values and opinions on what should be deemed worthy change. If something must have a purpose to have value and merit, then everything has a purpose, even if we do not understand yet what that is. But the main purpose of anything and anyone is to give glory to God. That might not have been the purpose Hugo had in mind for preserving Notre Dame, but it was the reason for it being built. And it is just one reason, if not the main reason, to be taken into consideration for everyone and everything.
Usually I start with definitions, but you've already heard those, so I'm just going to dive right into it. We are all children of God. He claimed us. He first claimed the Israelites. Then, through Jesus, he claimed all who truly strive to follow the Lord, in particular those who are baptized or seek baptism. He made us. We are his. And when he makes something, he looks at it and calls it good. But we are more than just one of God's many good creations. No, we are made in his own image, imago Dei. We have reason, creativity, choices galore. Further, when Jesus came down to earth, he came not as a monkey or a dog or a tree, but a human. He looked like us. We look like him. And that is worth something. The mere fact that we are made in his image and likeness means that we have human dignity. We deserve respect. The other day I came across the word respect with my fourth graders, so I asked them if anyone could define it. They came up with all sorts of ways of showing respect. Listening, being helpful, being attentive, using eye contact, but they couldn't quite nail down a definition. I couldn't blame them, for I also spent that time trying to come up with a good one. Eventually we turned to the dictionary, and the abridged version I gave them was this: respect is showing consideration to others. So, we are made in the image of God. This gives us human dignity that cannot be taken away. Having human dignity means we are worthy of respect, of consideration. We are not grass to be trampled on. We are not paper towels to be used and thrown away. We are humans. We are the same, brothers and sisters in Christ, and we need to act like it. When I was teaching high school theology, I started by teaching about human dignity, then moved on to how we need to treat others. The scripture passage I turned to was Matthew chapter 25, the final judgment. We would read from verse 31 to the end of the chapter. Quote, I was hungry and you gave me food. Lord, when did we see you hungry? Whatever you did to the least of my brothers, you did unto me. End quote. As humans, we have basic physical needs: food, water, shelter, clothing, heat, as well as emotional needs: a listening ear, a comforting hug, a nod of encouragement. Because we have human dignity, because we are made in the image of God, because we are worthy of respect and consideration, we have the right to these basic needs. With every right comes a duty. We have a duty to help those around us acquire these things that they have a right to, as we are able. The single mother who spent her whole paycheck to fix the car so she can go to work still has a hungry child to feed. It is their right to eat. It is our duty to help as we can. Perhaps a grocery store gift card or even a jar of peanut butter and a loaf of bread. The man on the corner with the homeless sign, shivering in his short-sleeved shirt, has a right to warmth. It is our duty to help as we can. Perhaps an old sweatshirt or coat could be found. Perhaps just a cup of hot gas station coffee. The exhausted caregiver who needs someone to vent to has a right to comfort. It is our duty to help as we can. Lend a listening ear. Make an offer to give care so she can have a break. Bring a meal to the door. The old man who needs a kidney transplant but doesn't have good insurance has a right to medical care. It is our duty to help as we can. Paying a bill, providing transportation, spreading the word to find a kidney donor. If we let his situation go unattended to, it is Jesus who is neglected. As one of my fourth graders said, we need to remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you were that single mother, wouldn't you want assistance? Perhaps her choices were not great, but that doesn't mean that her hunger should go ignored. What you do to her, you do to Jesus. And that man on the corner, perhaps he has a drug addiction, perhaps he is lying about being homeless, perhaps he spends his money on cigarettes. But however he got there, if you ignore him, you ignore Jesus. Or the caregiver in need of comfort, perhaps she took this burden upon herself. Perhaps she's pushed other people away, been blunt or rude or gossipy, and yet, whatever you do to her, you do to Jesus. As for the old man in need of a kidney transplant, perhaps his better years are behind him. Perhaps he made a poor choice on his insurance. Perhaps he should have worked harder or invested better. Perhaps his kids should be caring for him. But still, if you neglect him, you neglect Jesus. St. James wrote, quote, "What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, be warm and filled,' without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead." End quote. James chapter 2, verses 14 through 17. We cannot truly be said to be followers of Christ if we ignore him and our brothers and sisters, our fellow man. It is not for nothing that the 10 Commandments, the law, and the prophets can all be summed up in one sentence. Quote, "Love God and love your neighbor as yourself." End quote. From Matthew chapter 22, verses 36 through 40. For it is through loving our neighbor that we show our love to God. Why? Because he made us in his image and likeness. This gives us human dignity, the worthiness of respect and consideration, and it cannot be taken away.
Knights of Adonai, Part 6. Gaining the Scroll, by Joshua David Ling. "I repeat it again for your ears to hear. What are you doing so near to here?" Leopold shuddered for a moment of worry, and wondered what he could do. It was true he'd taken a vow of truthfulness, and honesty was his heart's view. Deceiving this man who wasn't even an enemy clearly would violate his oaths. But then he thought of a way around it, and he spoke up clearly and bold. "I'm thinking up riddles, my good man, to perchance gamble with your lord. Talon is well known for his playful spending. Is this all not so?" The guard shifted. Leo struck a chord. He smiled and lifted a brow. "Run 'em by me before your audience, if you've got money for now." Meanwhile, inside the tower, Han peeked and saw the guard talking below. He went about his business looking for notes or anything that would show the obvious shady dealings that Talon had bid and executed in his role. He took a few looks through ledgers and books and came across a perfect scroll. Han read fairly well, but business numbers were not a thing he enjoyed to recognize. Yet he could tell the big picture looked fishy, but how to get past the guard's eyes? He stuffed the scroll into his clothes and peeked out into the hall. There was no one to be seen at that moment, and he quietly crept along the wall. He found a servant's staircase, and then found his way outside. Meanwhile, just as he came out, Artours was laughing with pride. Lord Talon and he stepped outside and mirthfully breathed the fresh air. "Well, Leo, Han, finish the work? Lord Talon needs us away from here." "Are you really sure you can't stay?" Talon slurred a little too jolly. "No, we understand what we must do. Please forgive our folly. We have kept you far too long. We go now to finish our deed. Lord Talon waved them farewell, and back to the abbey they did proceed. When they were finally out of earshot, the three of them started to laugh. He doesn't even remember why he asked us here. Still, should we go back? Did we say we'd actually escort the gold? I think we need not worry. I have exactly what we're looking for. Owain will want it in a hurry.
Holy Heroes, John Paul II, by Sarah Levesque. Many of our listeners will remember Pope John Paul II, commonly shortened to JP2, officially known as Saint John Paul II. Born in Poland on May 18, 1920, he was named Karol Józef Wojtyła after his father. At the age of 8, young Karol lost his mother, Emilia, and then at the age of 12 he lost his older brother, Edmund. Perhaps these deaths were part of the reason why Karol later defended human life and dignity so diligently. In any case, Karol and his father had a very close relationship. As Karol grew up, he juggled altar serving at his local Catholic church, athletics, and acting in addition to academics. His formal education ended before he completed university, as the Germans invaded Poland on September 1, 1939. During World War II, Karol worked at a factory, continued his studies as best he could, wrote plays, and, after the death of his father, began studying for the priesthood. Like nearly all those in Poland, Karol saw firsthand the brutality of the Nazi Party, which likely was an important factor to his later defense of human life and dignity. Eventually, in 1946, the year after the Soviets gained control of Poland, Karol was ordained a Catholic priest. He traveled to Rome to gain his doctorate, after which he began teaching and lecturing on many topics, including theology, philosophy, and ethics. He began ministering to youth, wrote many poems, and, in 1960, published Love and Responsibility, about marriage and the theology of the body. Father Karol was appointed Auxiliary Bishop of Krakow in 1958, attended the Second Vatican Council, 1962 to 1965, where he impressed Pope Paul VI, and was subsequently named Archbishop of Krakow in 1963. Archbishop Wojtyła's work on the Commission for the Study of Problems of the Family, Population, and Birth Rate likely influenced Pope Paul VI's 1968 encyclical Humanae Vitae on human life, which defended human life from conception to natural death and condemned the use of artificial contraceptives. Meanwhile, as an archbishop and later a cardinal, Archbishop Wojtyła defied the communist leaders by officiating masses without their permission, traveling around his diocese to spread the gospel and church teachings, as he was not allowed access to the media. His various works earned him the high esteem of many, both laymen and clergy. 1978 was a difficult year for Roman Catholic officials. Pope Paul VI died on August 5th, and the cardinals voted in Albino Luciani as the new pope, Pope John Paul I, but he died on September 28th of that same year. The cardinals were faced with the necessity of electing a second pope in 3 months, and chose Archbishop Wojtyła on October 16th. He was 58 years old and the first non-Italian pope in centuries. He chose the name John Paul II to honor the 3 previous popes, who had all been influential in the Second Vatican Council. As Pope, JP2 traveled all around the world to speak to laymen, clergy, and politicians. Be not afraid, he told them, and he championed human rights and dignity, help for the poor, religious freedom, peace, and Christian unity, while condemning abortion, euthanasia, communism, greed, violence, materialism, and hate of all sorts. In 1981, JP2 survived an assassination attempt, forgiving his would-be killer in person after his recovery. He talked with Soviet leaders and revolutionaries, eventually helping to guide Soviet-held countries to independence without violence, starting with his beloved native Poland. He also worked to improve relations between Catholicism and other faiths, including non-Catholic Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Somehow he still managed to find time to direct the updates of the canon law and the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Despite all the upheaval he brought about, he still clung tightly to the Church's timeless traditions, including the ordination of only men to be priests, the condemnation of abortion, and the teaching of marriage as between one man and one woman, all of which have been passed down since the Church's earliest days. By 2003, At the age of 83, JP2's Parkinson's disease prevented him from standing for any significant amount of time, but he continued to speak in public until he had a tracheotomy in early 2005, after which he still blessed those gathered outside his window. Pope John Paul II died on April 2, 2005. He had overseen the Roman Catholic Church for 27 years. His funeral was attended by millions and watched on television by millions more. His successor, Pope Benedict XVI, allowed JP2's cause for canonization to sainthood to begin immediately, dispensing with the customary 5-year waiting period. John Paul II was canonized 9 years later, quite quickly, on April 27, 2014. May we, like John Paul II, always work for the respect and care of others.
An Old Scarf by Teresa Suarez-Vertefuille. A brown, wrinkled scarf wedged between the family's farmhouse wooden door and the draft is like a Cinderella. You wouldn't know it, wouldn't see beauty at first glance. Several winters salt burned 2 holes through the fabric. The runaway frayed edges stay, and the polka dots that used to dance in the middle seem to have broken pattern. Although if you were to unfold it, you see that they sit in exactly the same place as when they were sewn. When springtime melts the cold, giving way to warmth, will the scarf be dismissed of duty among the other rags, or with a shake that like a spell frees the sand find new life? The original color is white.
Our question for this issue is, what charitable cause or causes does your denomination primarily support, and why?
Garden Variety Christian, represented by Rebecca Lemke. Being untethered from any affiliation or denomination, decisions about the distribution of resources are made as a household based on where we feel called and led to help. Being able to use resources, time, energy, talents, financial donations directly has been a welcome change and blessing, as we feel it is easier to keep those resources from being abused, exploited, or stolen. It has also become much easier to make those contributions in a truly anonymous fashion, which is important to us. We support those in bodily need, in particular medical-related issues due to the complicated, particularly due to insurance, emotional, physical, and expensive nature of such things.
Non-denominational Christian, represented by Deborah Morgan. The causes closest to my home church's heart are primarily ones where we can meet physical needs or those in crisis. We've partnered with organizations like Hope is Alive, Honest House Foundation, Homeless Alliance, and many more. The most common thread throughout our 5 congregations is serving schools. Through community groups, church members also meet needs in their communities and neighborhoods outside of an organization. This is for both members of the church and those outside of it. Examples are helping single moms, storm damage cleanup, and providing supplies for local schools. Our focus is primarily locally, in community, but it does also exist on a broader support scale of other states and even countries, most recently being a church plant in Dubai, India. My church's motto is, love God, love people, and push back darkness, and the causes that we partner with, or groups that receive a Push Back Darkness grant, help to do just that by having godly people show up in real tangible ways while also bringing the love of Jesus.
Presbyterian Church Independent, represented by Joshua David Ling. Our main charitable support goes straight to the families in our church. Beyond that, we have some that goes to Augusta Care Pregnancy Center, which counsels women in crisis pregnancies, and support a small handful of missionaries in Eastern Europe and Bangladesh. Our reasoning is to start close to home and spread out as far as we're able, remaining good stewards of the gifts God has given us. If we do not take care of our own congregants and city first, we can't truly help others.
Roman Catholic, represented by Sarah Levesque. Each diocese, group of parishes, supports a wide variety of local organizations that in turn support the community. Many of the parishes have a Council of the Knights of Columbus, a group of dedicated men who raise money for specific charities or causes, food pantries, disaster relief, and many more, and dedicate their time volunteering besides. Many parishes have a soup kitchen, food pantry, or shelter they are partnered with, and all give of their income to Catholic Charities, an organization that supports the community in a myriad of ways by providing food, shelter, mental health services, pregnancy education and parenting education, legal assistance, and more to anyone in need. In addition, our parishes ask for special collections at various times to be sent to sister churches in poorer areas throughout the world. This is but a taste of the work being done by the Catholic churches in the United States.
Work Must Be Wrought by Jordan Ellis Christiansen. Read by the author. I wake up weary. Oh, so weary, from a night sore and surly. Day runs to day, and night to night. Days dart, and evenings ebb. Mine eyes droop and face darkens. My visage is grim and grey with grame. Where is mirth? Where is merriment? My hands have hindered both. Work must be wrought. Where is glee? Where is gaiety? My feet have faltered both. Work must be wrought. My heart feels hectic. Oh, so hectic! My spirits, certes, are septic. Summer ceases, and winter waxes. Flowers fall, and leaves are lost. I ponder with painful paces. My strength seems to sickly stray. Where is rest? Where is renewing? My mind hath meandered much. Work must be wrought. Where is hope? Where is healing? My heart hath hindered enough. Work must be wrought. I look up hopeful, oh so hopeful, to Christ who cures all that's curseful. Day dawns, and even's ended. Darkness dwindles, and the sun shines. The Holy Ghost giveth grace. By his means might is restored. There is joy, there is jolliness. In his waters there is wellness. His work hath been wrought. There is peace, there is purity. In his supper sins are solved. His work hath been wrought. There is freedom, there is forgiveness. In Jesus Christ sins are stopped. His work hath been wrought.
The Heavens Draped in Sackcloth, Sigh by Michael Stalcup. The heavens draped in sackcloth sigh, and heavy-hearted say goodbye to closest family, dearest kin, as frozen tears well up within. Then gazing at the barren earth, the skies release with mingled mirth their very own, to journey down, and wreath the world with winter's crown. Created part of nature's flow, yet always new creations grow, where snow descends from clouds above, a quiet word, an artist's love. And painting with a single hue, it colors in the world anew. The rocks on plains are summits high, now peeking through a cloudy sky, and dark-barked, craggy, lifeless trees are bursting forth with brightest leaves. And down below the silent sea, a blanket of serenity, yet welcoming the playful sounds of footsteps laughing through the mounds of playful powder, hills and plains, where children bound and angels deign to leave their evanescent marks in snow unmelted by the sparks of nascent creativity and brushes of divinity. While gazing from a windowsill, a wizened man can wonder still. Rain, fog, and hail, but why this snow? For beauty such, who do we owe our gratitude and silent awe, our disappointment when it thaws? Whoever could have thought up snow, and could it offer hints to know?
All Glory, Laud, and Honor, written by Theodulf of Orleans, translated by John Mason Neal, performed by Sarah Levesque. All glory, laud, and honor to you, Redeemer King, to whom the lips of children make sweet hosannas ring. You are the King of Israel and David's royal Son. Now in the Lord's name coming, our King and Blessed One. All glory, laud, and honor to you, Redeemer King, to whom the lips of children make sweet hosannas ring. The company of angels are praising you on high, and mortals joined with all things created make reply. All glory, laud, and honor to you, Redeemer King, to whom the lips of children make sweet hosannas ring. The people of the Hebrews with palms before you went. Our praise and prayers and anthems before you we present. All glory, laud, and honor to you, Redeemer King, to whom the lips of children make sweet hosannas ring. To you before your passion they sang their hymns of praise. To you now high exalted our melody we raise. All glory, laud, and honor to you, Redeemer King, to whom the lips of children make sweet hosannas ring. Their praises you accepted, accept the prayers we bring. Great source of love and goodness, our Savior and our King.
Musical Musings, All Glory, Laud, and Honor, by Ian Wilson. There is nothing of more worth or value than God. He is the sum total of all goodness, the source of all life, wisdom, power, and the creative force of the universe. All things are in his power, and we can do nothing without him. Our Lord Jesus Christ, of one substance with the Father, very God, is indeed the King of all the earth, as this hymn by St. Theodulf, Bishop of Orleans, confesses. He is the highest value of anyone that has ever lived. Yet he has given his own precious life for us sinners. Little is known about the author of this hymn, St. Theodulf. He was apparently an accomplished theologian and one of Charlemagne's trusted advisors. He is credited with being a strong defender of the Western concept of the Filioque, the phrase describing the procession of the Holy Spirit from the Father and the Son in the Nicene Creed. However, when Charlemagne's son Louis took the throne, he accused St. Theodulf of participating in a rebellion and had him imprisoned in a monastery, where it is believed he died. The hymn St. Theodulf wrote, All Glory, Laud, and Honor, describes the triumphal entry of our Lord Jesus into Jerusalem. Thus it is frequently sung on Palm Sunday. The hymn reminds us that Jesus is King, and we should treat him as such, praising him, praying to him, and worshiping him as King of the universe. I think we often forget that Jesus, though humble and lowly, is in fact the King. We value him so little. In a sense, he is happy to be devalued, as Philippians 2:6-8 tells us. But in the end, he desires that we should make him king of our lives, as it says in verses 9-11. Too often we value something or someone higher than Christ, who is preeminent in all things. We develop a disordered affection, in which we place the creatures ahead of the Creator. We order our lives around ourselves rather than the giver of life. May we one day be able to sing truthfully, All glory, laud, and honor to you, Redeemer King.
Snow White and the Faeblood Prince, from the Faeblood Archive by T.K. Wilson. Once upon a time, the Faeblood and humans lived in harmony. The magic of the Faeblood made life simpler for all, and they taught humans how to make magic on their own. Together they built the city of Hawthorne, a testament to the friendship of Fae and man, filled with technological marvels that the world had never seen. But this peace was not to last. Wicked humans delved into forbidden magic and greedily exploited the Faeblood for their skill. They even created a race of artificial beings, half clay, half machine, the homunculi. A mighty battle was fought, and the Fae were victorious, as their weapons were death to homunculi. A truce was reached where the humans were given Hawthorne and the Faeblood would have the great forest and their own city, Tir na Nog. Not all Faeblood left the city, however. A guard composed of ogres and dwarves lived under the city in a vast network of tunnels, for the Faeblood king, Oberon, believed that someday the two peoples might be united once again. Hawthorne, the city where the rich and powerful rule. I was fortunate that I was born into one of those rich and powerful families, the leading family, in fact. My father Henry was the head of the city council and was friend with King Oberon of the Faeblood. That was before he died, though, and I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Snow White Sylvan. I was the apple of my father's eye. Everyone called me the little princess, but father taught me that the way to be a true princess was to be generous, forgiving, brave, and kind. My mother died when I was just a baby, but we were happy, just him and me. But that was before she came into our lives. She was Elizabeth Drackle. She was very beautiful, but hated me the instant she set eyes on me. She acted like she didn't, but I could tell she was lying. When father was around, she acted all sugar and spice. When she was gone, she would practically turn chartreuse with anger and drive me away. The first thing she did was remove the guards King Oberon assigned to us, a team of 7 dwarves, which included a dwarf named Selig, who was only a little older than me. He was my best friend. I was only 6 at the time and didn't understand why this was happening. I cried for days when she sent away Selig, but he promised he wouldn't be far away. I didn't understand what he meant. Then father died. I cried till I was sick out of grief and fear, but now I was stuck with Elizabeth. Father left everything to me, but Elizabeth insisted on running everything herself. I was too young, of course. Father had made provision for that, trusted friends, which she promptly removed. Now that she had all the money, she fired all the remaining staff and brought in homunculi. How I hated those homunculi! At first, I tried to make the best of it. not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it turns out it was all bathwater. Their shallow skin was cold and ugly, and the machine parts sticking out of them made them poor companions. Homunculi are also mute, which Elizabeth appreciated. She didn't like the former staff and guards, who chatted and sang all day. Staff are to be seen and not heard, like children, she scolded me when I complained. Eventually I was confined to the house. For your safety, Elizabeth said, so you don't get kidnapped. Kidnapping would be preferable to living like this. One day when I was 10, I passed by Elizabeth's room. The door opened a crack, and though it was naughty, I peeked in. There was Elizabeth, surrounded by black candles, standing in front of a big, ornate mirror, speaking to it. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is fairest of us all? You are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer far than you. What? Elizabeth screeched. She's just a child. I quietly ran away. Now I knew who my stepmother was. She was a witch. That was why she'd gotten rid of the Faeblood. They would have found her out, and now my life was in danger. That very night I packed some clothes, a little packaged food, a few dog bones, and some treasures I couldn't bear to leave behind, and climbed out the window on a flower trellis. I had no plans beyond escape, and a vague idea to find some Faeblood. And it was cold out. I wish I'd had time to get my coat. I struck out across the lawn towards the wall that surrounded the house. Then I heard the guard dogs coming, but I had already considered that. I didn't know if they would know me in the dark, so I threw them the bones. Once I heard them contentedly crunching the bones, I climbed the ivy on the wall and swung over to safety and freedom. I landed on some bushes, then made my way down to the little embankment the house sat on, and down towards the city. I heard something in the bushes nearby and froze. "Snow?" said a strange voice, but one that was familiar all the same. "Who's there?" I called out. A shape came out of the shadow of the house. "It's me, Selig," replied the voice. I ran over and gave him a hug. "You've gotten bigger," he remarked. "What are you doing here? We couldn't abandon you. In fact, we plan to rescue you if need be. The others are close by. Come on." Selig took me by the hand and took me down to a tunnel at the base of the hill my house was built on. "I didn't know this was here. We like it that way," said Selig. "No one knows about them except for other Faeblood and the few humans in our charge." The tunnel was lit with glowing mushrooms. The echoes of other people in the tunnel network reached us. "Will we live here now?" I asked. "No, well, Sven will explain it." Sven was the commander of their squadron, I remembered. The some of them were all related in some way. There's Sven, Senta, Selda, Siggy, Simi, Selig, and his sister Swanhilda, who was the only female and the healer. Selig took me into a large room with a fire pit and some forging equipment. "Look what I found!" called Selig. The dwarves surrounded me, chattering with glee. "Well, healthy and whole, it seems," said Swanhilda. "How'd you get her out by yourself, Selig?" said Selda. "I didn't. She managed it all on her own," said Selig. "It's wonderful to see you all again," I said. "Have you been down here the whole time?" "Of course. Just because your stepmother dismissed us doesn't mean King Oberon gave us leave to abandon our posts," said Sven. "And now we're going to take you to him in the great forest." "What?" I said, confused. "Your father was his friend, and His Majesty's will and pleasure that you come under his protection. But I've heard the Faeblood of the great forest hate humans. If they did, do you think we'd take you in there?" "No, they only hate human greed that takes without limit," exclaimed Selig. "You want for nothing there," said Swanhilda. "There's lots of other children to play with, and Queen Titania has already promised you a position in her court. She's never even seen me, and I barely remember the king." "That does not matter, love. He remembers you," said Swanhilda. We made it out by sunrise. I paused to look down into the city one last time, shining purple in the dawn with the moon still hanging over the skyscrapers. I was sad to leave, but the forest beckoned, with more green than I had ever imagined. I held Selig and Swanhilda's hands as we walked. Once we reached the outskirts of the forest, the dwarves began to sing in their deep, rough voices, a song I didn't recognize from the days they spent at my house, but seemed to call the forest closer and cover our tracks. We walked until we came to a road in the midst of the forest, wide and green, that seemed to glow. Then we heard the jingling of bells. Out of the forest came animals, horses, ponies, even a tiger. I'd only seen pictures of such animals, and riding on them came fairies of every description, and at the head of them all came a man and a woman. They wore elaborate crowns on their heads. The man's had a little half-mask attached over his eyes, and in the glimmer of their glamour, the woman's skin and hair seemed pale blue. Behind them on a white horse came a boy with fair skin and white hair, about my age. "Hail, your majesties!" called Sven, bowing. The procession came to a halt. The man in the mask turned to us. "Hail, Sven of Hawthorne March! Has your quest been accomplished at last?" "What quest? I didn't know we were on a quest," said Selig. "Yes, my lord." Sven gestured to me. "Snow White, the daughter of your friend, has been rescued. Rescued herself, in fact, clever girl that she is." "Very good." The king dismounted and bowed down to me. "Do you remember me, Snow White?" "Only a little, your highness," I said, curtsying. The queen and the boy dismounted and came to stand beside the king. "How poorly you're dressed!" exclaimed the queen. "You must be freezing." "Snow, you should have said something," scolded Swanhilda. "It's okay, I adjusted," I said with a smile. The queen undid her cape around her shoulders. I could now see that she was very pale with pale hair and not blue, and wrapped me in it. "You shall live so well that you will forget your former sorrow and never more remember your time in the city. May your time with us be filled with joy," said the queen. "Now you will ride with me back to Tir na Nog." "Fall in," ordered Sven to his squad. "If you will, Sven," said Oberon, "I will relieve you of your service in Hawthorne, so you may be Snow White's personal bodyguard." "Oh, we'd like that very much, sir," said Sven. As we rode along, the boy came up beside the queen and I. "This is my son, Prince Finn," she said. So the boy was a prince. I offered him my hand for him to shake, but he gently turned it at the wrist and kissed my knuckles. I blushed for a split second. "Father has spoken about you," said Finn. "I hope we can be friends." "I hope so, too." I looked up at the queen. "Why are you all doing this for me? We are immortal, Snow. We do not lightly forgive those who have harmed us, but we always care for our friends and their children." She replied, "The years as I grew all blended together. There were many fairy children to play with, and what Oberon said was true. I did forget the city, and my stepmother, and all my sorrows. There was only one long, merry summer with Finn and the others." Finn and I actually became best friends, which seemed to please his mother, and even Selig, who became more of an elder brother to me. Though Finn took his duties as the prince seriously, he loved to smile more than frown and was merry as the first birds of spring. I forgot my former life so completely that when Faeblood and humans fled Hawthorne and came to Tir na Nog, no one recognized me, though I was a well-known figure once. The queen had placed me in charge of the refugees, but charged me never to reveal my name. Often I wept for them. So many were sick, some dying due to overwork and bad air. I would tend the graves and sing laments for those who had died with only my dwarves to attend me. Sometimes Finn would come as well, dressed in sober black. One night, just before my 21st birthday, I looked in the mirror and realized I had grown up. And Finn had grown up too. The innocence of fairyland had kept me from realizing it, and for some reason I was afraid. I was beautiful, and the words of the magic mirror floated through my head. "You are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer far than you." I remembered my stepmother. I remembered the city, and I knew why I was afraid. This is part 1 of a 2-part story. You can read the rest at LogoSophia.com.
All right. Welcome to another interview with LogoSophia magazine. I will be conducting the interview this time. My name is Ian Wilson. I'm the assistant editor of LogoSophia magazine. I'm also a self-published author and artist, and today I will be interviewing our lead editor, Sarah Levesque. Say hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
So tell us a little about yourself.
How many times have I conducted these interviews? And I don't know what to say. Well, I am a cradle Catholic. I am one of the lucky ones that never fell away from the faith. And God has always been a huge part of my life. So in 2019, he told me to start a magazine. And I said, okay. And he was like, okay. I started like looking into it. Like, okay, wait a minute. I've been working on magazines for a long time. I know a lot of people. Okay, God has literally set me up to do this properly. This makes sense. He gave me all the resources I will need. And we got started. Actually, Ian, you were one of the first people I pulled on board. You and your sister.
Yes, well, I remember saying that it was a good idea.
Let's see. A little more about me. I live in New England, where I am currently sad that it has yet to snow on this late December day. But it is what it
Yeah.
is. Um, most of my writing at this time is for LogoSophia, but I also have completed multiple short stories that are in various anthologies and a just about 100-page fan fiction about Eowyn from Lord of the Rings, which, of course, we don't publish fan fiction on LogoSophia, so that is living on my website.
All right, that makes sense. When did you start writing?
I started writing when I was 6 years old. If you go with the spirit of what I was writing versus the letter, wrote a little book about the goose and the moose, except spelling was not my strong point at 6 years old, and so it was really something along the lines of the Gus and the Mus. And how they married and had two goose mooses as children, and yeah, it was a very strange little story. I still have it somewhere. It was written on lined paper and bound together with twisty ties. Actually, that was my first story I had ever written. First story I finished until I was about, I think I was in ninth grade, and I got a story prompt from my teacher, and I wrote a story. And in the middle, I had started quite a number of stories, but I never got anywhere with them.
Right. So, what is your... Well, you don't actually have a book published, do you?
I'm in
So,
multiple anthologies,
I guess
but
I'll
that's
ask
all I
you,
can claim.
what's your latest project about?
That's the funny thing. My latest project is and always will be for the foreseeable future LogoSophia. So,
Okay.
I've got, as I said, I'm in multiple anthologies. I've got another anthology story that will be coming out this coming year at some point. Um, it's the third installment of the Whitstead series. We did Summertime, I think is the one that's coming up. I could be mistaken. It's been a while since I've looked. I wrote 4 stories for the 4 anthologies, and I'm not sure which one they're actually up to publishing. It's the third one, whichever that one is. But yeah, it's just kind of different things that hit me I'll write about. And occasionally I'll get a story that'll just strike me out of the blue. Generally, while I'm sleeping, I'll pull apart a dream and say, okay, this has merit, this has merit. We're chucking that idea because that makes no sense. And I'll write a little story from there. So most of my stories are short stories.
Great. That's outstanding. I publish a lot of short stories myself, so no,
Oh, I know.
that's a topic for another time. How did you come up with the idea for this story?
For the stories for the anthology or for like the magazine in general?
I don't know. To pick your latest story, whichever one that is.
Whew. Uh, that might have to be my Uncle Matty stories for the anthology. Um, so there was this cool anthology that was making its way around my circles, or the prompts were, and it was about um this kind of fantasy sci-fi um goings on in a little village called Whitstead. Maybe it's Whitestead. I don't really know. It doesn't have an E. So I'm thinking it's Whitstead.
I've been assuming it was Whitestead, but I don't know either.
See, I don't really know. Things I should know. Anyway, I'm going to keep calling it Whitstead because it doesn't have an E. And I was like, ooh, this is really cool. But I also didn't have any ideas. And the submissions deadline was getting closer and closer. And it was set in the 1800s. I forgot to mention that part. So it was set in the 1840s, I believe. And it's like basically there's this small town. Anything that you want to happen in this town can happen in this town. And people were
Oh,
popping up and saying, "Oh, I'm going to bring in aliens. I'm going to bring in angels. I'm going to bring in gnomes. I'm going to bring in fairies." And it's like, okay, all of this stuff is going on. And all of these stories got interwoven. And I'm sitting there kind of watching this happen over a Facebook group, like, man, I want to be part of this. And I had no ideas, nothing, squat, absolutely nada. And then one day, I think it was like 2 days before the deadline, I had been reading, um, wasn't that one? Which one was it? I have them on my bookshelf somewhere, but I just redid my bookshelf, so I don't know where they are anymore. Hornblower, the Horatio Hornblower series.
yeah.
So my thoughts were on the sea and on sailing ships. So I got this idea. I could write about a sailor who comes home for Christmas because the first one was a Whitestead Christmas.
Oh,
And it's like, okay, so I can write a story about this sailor who comes home from sea and sees some of the stuff that the other people are describing in more detail. And I somehow lit upon the idea of this guy um, not having much of a family of his own. He has a sister who is running the orphanage of Whitstead. And so she has all these orphans in her care, and many of the orphans have stories of their own written by other authors. So I kind of put Uncle Matty into the lives. That was his name was Matthew Rossiter, and I decided, or he decided, because let's be real, he was the one driving this story, not me. He decided that he was going to be Uncle Matty to these children. And he kind of adopted them all. And he managed to bring in fireworks for Guy Fawkes Day. He got them all presents, which his stingy sister would never consider. Oh, goodness, that would put what to do. It's too much of an expense. So he basically spoiled these children and in return caught glimpses of their stories. Moving snowmen, children who could walk through walls, and all sorts of shenanigans. Because as I said, anything can happen in Whitstead. So that one was so much fun, and they decided, okay, we're going to continue this. I don't think the original idea was that it was going to be a series, but we just had too much fun with it. So then we jumped to the next season, and I was like, okay. Oh, actually, I should say that the first story was written in the form of letters from Matty to his friend and shipmate. I think I gave him the very boring name of John. Very English, since it's all set in England. I'm pretty sure I gave him the very boring name of John. And so it's all told between letters with a couple entries in Maddie's journal, which he calls his logbook, being a sailor. And then the next one, for the next one, I had Maddie come back again, but I needed a good reason for him to come back. So, due to a sailing accident, his leg is no longer seaworthy. So he
Oh,
comes to stay. And in the meantime, some of the orphans have, been farmed out to families or to apprenticeships or whatever. And um, you get to see what happens more. And most of the other authors also continued following their own characters. So all of these little interwoven lives make up this anthology. And I was really excited to see Uncle Maddie's journey from just being a sailor to adopting these children to eventually having some weight in the orphanage itself and being able to help these children. And um, in this third story, he is falling in love.
hmm.
So it's fun. And then it's kind of funny because I wrote the fourth story almost immediately after the third story because the characters were talking to me, which sounds really creepy and mad and
I
crazy.
was
But
about
hey,
to
I'm an
say,
author.
that
That's what
does
happens.
sound a little nuts. So, um, what was it like writing the first short story?
Um, it was interesting because I was like, okay, I had to gather all of this data from these other authors who were writing. And as they went, they would adjust things and I would adjust things. And we had to have a pretty constant stream of talk going on between those of us who were writing about the orphans so that it didn't contradict. And I was
Hmm.
like, okay, so I can write about this stuff. Maddie's side of things was pretty easy, but John's side was less easy because his life was really boring. Because he didn't have children in his life, and he went home to his parents and sprained his ankle and got really upset about spraining his ankle on dry land. So yeah, it was fun, but John's side took a little more thinking. His name was John. I think his name was John. See, I'm going to be second guessing myself about that because I wasn't planning on talking about Uncle Maddie's stories, but now I am.
Well, that's what happens. So, how did you go about publishing this story?
So the fun thing is, I didn't have much to do with that side of things. It's great. I think it was Abigail and Sarah Falanga. Am I saying their last name right?
Uh, I've heard it. I've usually heard it Falanga.
Falanga. Okay. So I'm pretty sure it was Abby and Sarah Falanga who were in charge of that. So they went with a a website slash publishing company thing that specializes in anthologies and bringing together multiple authors. So they worked out the paperwork side of things. All I had to do was sign away my life and email the PDF back to them, and it was good. The proceeds get farmed out to all of us by the same website. Um, so yeah, that was fun. Now I kind of want to stop and talk about my Awen story.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
All right, talk about it. Tell us about your Eowyn story.
So I was rereading Lord of the Rings, or re-listening to it, I should say, because we have the CDs
Oh,
narrated by Rob Inglis. perfection. Okay, you can't get any better than that. Although I hear Andy Serkis has done a good job. Because Rob Inglis, he sings everything, he does voices, he's got the whole gambit. So anyway, I was listening to those again, and I was like, man, Tolkien really didn't do a lot with Eowyn from Rohan. And my brain was like, okay, so why is she depressed? What's going on here? Like all of this, she needed background. So I gave it to her. I decided I was going to write her story, like why she was, so depressed. Because obviously you read it and you're like, okay, yeah, she's got depression. And even with Tolkien, you're like, okay, yep, this makes sense. Grandma's running her country, and everybody she loves is dying. Not great. But I really wanted to flesh that out. And so I decided, you know what? The thing that starts this all off, aside from everybody that we already know of dying, like her cousin Theodred, and the diminishing, as it were, of her uncle Theoden, I decided what would really kick it off would be if she had fallen in love and he had died. So I did my research. I was digging deep into the books. I was digging deep into the appendixes, into the timelines, and I dug into the lineage of the kings of Rohan to find a name for this character. And he ended up with the name Aldor.
Oh.
So the story starts when Aldor first comes to Edoras, as was the custom, so I decreed, for all the 18-year-old guys of Rohan to pledge his sword to the king. So he does that, and then he sticks around. He joins Theodred's Eored, and that's the big troop of soldiers, the big troop of horsemen is an Eored, which, interestingly enough, the plural of Eored is also Eored. But he joins Theodred's Eored, and he's around, and so he starts he kind of does the Aragorn in the movies thing where he sneaks up on her and catches her while she's practicing.
Okay.
And then he offers basically to teach her how to use the sword properly. So they go from there. And so they go from there, and over the course of, I think I gave them a year, thereabouts, they fall in love. And I really had to work out the dates of all of this so that it would work nicely. And I had to learn a lot about Vikings, because the Rohirric people were based on the Vikings, just with horses.
Oh, right.
So I had to learn a fair amount about Vikings. And then when I had gone and gotten Eowyn through her grief at losing Aldor, and that's not really a spoiler because if you know Lord of the Rings, you know he doesn't exist. Once I got her through that grief, and by through that grief, I really mean to that grief, because she still wrestles with it throughout the entirety of Lord of the Rings, or throughout the entirety of Two Towers and to Return of the King. Anyway, I decided to keep going. And so I continued with basically her perspective of everything that happens in the Two Towers in Rohan, and then once they go to Gondor. And I was gonna stop there, but also that didn't work because I had to tell her story with Faramir, because Tolkien really doesn't give them a lot of screen time, as it were. He gives them a total of half a short chapter, I believe. And some of it has to do with Eowyn, and some of it has to do with Faramir. And as somebody said to me recently, it just seems really abrupt, that relationship between Eowyn and Faramir. But I went and I fleshed it out, and I gave them reason, and I gave them some distance, and I gave them some time together, and until I felt like it worked without changing from Tolkien's timeline, because I'm not going to change Tolkien's work. That'd be wrong.
Ew.
But using Tolkien's rather short timeline, I think I made it work so that I was happy with it. And because I had steeped myself in the books so deeply, I had some success in pulling off a narrative voice like his. So I tried hard.
Why do you write?
Couple reasons. I write when characters start talking to me, because that's the only way to get them out of my head. I write nonfiction in order to work out a problem that I'm facing, or to delve into a realization that I may have had. Like recently, this one hasn't been published yet because I've been focusing on publishing the Christmas things on the blog. But I recently wrote a piece about God kind of claiming us. And that one was really interesting for me, because that one, it was just one of those realizations of, this is obvious, but it's immense. And I hadn't touched the immensity of it before.
Mm.
So by the time that this interview is live, that'll be up on the blog. So sometimes it's because of that. Sometimes it's like, oh, that's right. I have a magazine. I have to write something for this. And then I'll start thinking about whatever topic we've chosen. And, I'll usually pray about it, and God will give me something. Like, my piece for this magazine, this issue, I wrote in adoration. So I was sitting there in front of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, and I had my prayer journal open, and I just started writing because all of the pieces were in my brain. I just had to fit them together. And that often tends to be what it is for my nonfiction. It's like, oh, I have all these pieces, but I need to bring them together into a full, cohesive something.
Right, yes. Everybody has to do that. Everybody who writes, anyway. What helps you write? Music, pets, reading, specific pen, etc.?
Literally nothing. It doesn't matter. As if I have something going on in my head and I have the time, I will sit down and write it.
Well,
Sometimes
that was
easy. Yeah. My fiction, I prefer writing longhand. So I will have a pencil or a pen and some paper, and I'll go at it. Like most of my all of my Eowyn story was written in a notebook. Some of it lefty because I broke my right hand. Fun times. But most of my fiction has to be by hand. And then my nonfiction, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter.
Interesting. What has writing taught you?
Well, because I write, I've had to learn a lot about grammar. That's kind of what started me on this path to being an editor, was the writing I did in high school and figuring out, oh, why did my teacher mark this part wrong? What are the rules about commas? And then just diving into it and getting obsessed. So writing kicked me off on the journey to becoming an editor with that grammar obsession. Writing has taught me a lot about so many things because, again, I write in part to explain things to myself, to work out problems, to understand more clearly what it is that I'm thinking, what it is that God wants me to do, what it is that the church, specifically the Catholic Church, believes. Yeah. Also, how to write in crunch time when the deadline's already gone by.
So, who are you inspired by in your writing?
The A1 story was very much inspired by Tolkien, of course. My Uncle Matty's stories were kicked off by the Horatio Hornblower books and my love of um, the literature of the sea, as it were. But I don't know. It really depends basically on who I was reading last. And again, what's going on in my life that I need to work through. It's never anything specific. I'm not one of those people that writes to music generally. Music tends to be distracting to me because I'll just be like, oh, music. And forget about the writing side of things. So it varies greatly.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Do you go back and reread your writing after it's completed?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. My short stories I'll go back and I'll read. My Aemon story I'll go back and I will read. I'll reread my nonfiction too, just with less frequency. I've always been big on rereading books. Anything that's old and familiar, but I might have forgotten something because it's been that much time. I'll go back and reread it for familiarity. And it's funny because sometimes I'll go back and reread my work and be like, oh yeah, they did that. Forgot about that. And I'll get myself all excited. It's great.
I do that too, honestly. It rereading some of my old work, and I was like, oh, I really enjoy writing that. It's like you get the feeling all over again. It's nice.
Yeah.
What is your
You come up with
advice? Sorry.
I was gonna say you recatch that turn of phrase that you got just right, and you're like, oh yeah.
What is your advice to writers?
Don't stop. You don't have to write because it'll bring you fame and fortune. You can write just for the heck of it. I have so many random things that are half written. I have so many things that nobody will ever get to read. I have so many awful poems that very few people will get to lay their eyes on. But writing is healing. Writing helps you to understand. Writing helps you to slow down, to create and be a co-creator with Christ in a very small way. Yeah, even if you don't meet your grand expectations, even if you don't hit your large aspirations, just keep writing because it's important. In our culture, we tend to leave the arts to those who are quote unquote good at them. Don't. You'll be better if you practice, but don't focus on don't necessarily focus on the publication side, on the sharing side, on the let's make it big and make money and be famous side. But write because you can, because you have that ability, you have that opportunity.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I do want to shout out to who was my last interview? Now I can't even remember, and I feel so bad. Somebody came on the last minute to interview with me, and they were the ones that told me that I needed to be the one interviewed. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, it was Abby Jorgensen. She told me that I needed to be on the interviewed side of things. And I was like, oh, okay. So shout out to Abby on that one. Also, for those of you who have stuck around to the end of this interview, please share the magazine. If you have a couple bucks to throw our way, we can definitely use them because we're all pretty much doing this for free. So,
Yeah.
share everything. Share anything that makes you smile, makes you cry, make you laugh. Share LogoSophia. Share the works of her authors. Share the works of anybody who is putting out themselves into the world in what may seem like a small way, because you never know who you're going to impact with that share. You might be impacting us. You might be impacting somebody in your life. You might be impacting somebody you never even heard of that's a friend of a friend, or a friend of a friend of a friend, or further down the line. You never know. So don't forget to share. And that's all I got.
Great. Excellent. So thank you for taking the time to do this interview for us. We hope
Thank
that
you. Thank you for putting aside time in your day to do this.
You're welcome. We hope that you will see great success in your future at LogoSophia and elsewhere. And to all of you who have been listening to this, we thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to Sarah's words and are taking the time to please edit this out. Good afternoon and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. We'll stop the
The Shallows by Michael Stalcup. When I drink in the stars and upward sink into the theater your words have wrought, I touch unfelt immensity and think, like Grandma used to pause in patient thought, before an ordinary flower awed by intricacies hidden in plain view. Then say, "You don't have to do that, God." Surely a smaller universe would do. But you have walled us in with open seas, unconquerable, wild with distant shores, whose raging dawns are but your filigree. Across our vaulted skies, this art of yours, what Grandma held, and I behold these flames frame truth which awes us more. You know our names. What now?
We hope you've enjoyed the winter 2024 issue of LogoSophia magazine. focused on value and worth? If you have, please let us know on our website, LogoSophiaMag.com. Join us for our next issue, Spring 2024, based on the true, the good, and the beautiful nature. The deadline for submissions is March 1st, 2024.